Welcome in the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, you can hear us every day, and you might be doing that right now on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. If you're not, that is a good way to get us. Download the Dash Radio app and then search for Nothing But Net. You'll find us every day, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 8 a.m. Pacific. Also, check out 5reasonsports.com. That's our free website. We don't have a paywall, so you can find all of our stories. You find we can put in a lot more up there lately than we have in the past. And also our guy Brady Hawk is putting up all of the latest takeaways after every game and also everything from the Zoom press conferences, one of which our guy Alex Toledo is going to join in a second. Also, check out our great sponsors. That includes Biscayne Bay Brewing. You can find me tweeting with them during games. You can find their Twitter account at Biscayne Bay Brew, but also you can find their beer all over South Florida. They're the official craft beer of Inter Miami, the Red Hot Miami Marlins, and Red Hot 5 Reasons Sports Network. This is South Florida's actual independent brewery. Biscayne Bay is owned by local guys who employ people in this community to make their beer right here in South Florida. These guys are committed to our community and support 5 Reasons Sports so we can keep bringing you all the local sports content that you can handle. If you care about supporting local business and drinking amazing beer, I'm going to have one of them after the podcast, maybe a couple. Grab their stuff. That's Marlins Lager, Miami Pale Ale, and Tropical Bay IPA at all major retailers throughout South Florida. It's the only beer we drink at 5 Reasons Sports lately. And Matt Perdomo, we know you have the beer, so get it to us. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the Floor, doing something a little bit different today. We're kind of starting this episode before the game even ends. So we're doing this on Monday night, but it's become a blowout here in the fourth quarter. Today's floor plan, I've got Alex Toledo. I've got Greg Sylvander. Alex, as I said, is going to be leaving for the Zoom calls, so we'll update you on all of that. I assume Alphonse Sidney might be joining us, but he might have had too many Biscayne Bay brews. All right, let's get right to it, guys. We were talking on the pregame, Greg, on our YouTube channel about how this was the game that the Heat were gearing up for. You know, that they held Jimmy out when Jimmy wanted to play in the last game. They held Goran out. And in this game, Erik Spoelstra starts Goran Dragic, the guy he trusts to win a playoff game. He was aggressive from the start. We saw more aggressive Bam Adebayo. We saw Jimmy Butler put up big numbers even without shooting the ball well again. And we saw a flash from Derrick Jones Jr. in the first half and another in the second half, which helped until Duncan Robinson got going, and he did get going in the third quarter. Your overall impressions of this win?
I mean, I think that it was the closest that we've seen the team approach to a playoff game so far. The 9-man rotation was particularly something that I thought played to the Heat's strengths tonight, because initially the bench got off to a bad start, but eventually as they kept churning out, they kind of grinded down Indy's depth. And you saw that, Derrick Jones Jr. pop off the stat sheet and do some stuff there. Even guys like Tyler Hero started to round out the game as we went on. But ultimately, this was a Jimmy game. I know everyone was watching for the Jimmy Butler, TJ Warren stuff. And it was really good to see him, despite some shooting struggles, start to right the ship in the second half. Still getting to the line. So I thought it was about as good a tune-up as we could have hoped for. And now it's all about kind of rest and see where you end up and who you play in a week.
Alex, get to it.
I mean, honestly, I agree with everything Leif said there. I think it's been an amazing win. I love the Jimmy games, man. Those are some of my favorite games from this Heat team, is when Jimmy just kind of asserts himself as, oh, yeah, I'm the best player on the team. I'm the biggest reason this team took this jump. And he took it personal tonight, man. He was over there guarding Warren. Warden was kind of cowering to the corner a couple of times, but he was firing off plenty. And they did a very good job, I think, containing Warren, other than a couple wide open looks that he had. I think he had a lot of difficult shots. I loved what Jimmy was doing. He was really honestly, there was only a couple of shots there that I didn't like that Jimmy took. They were kind of forced, but it was more end of shot clock stuff. Other than that, Jimmy was really getting to the rim and really forcing himself physically onto these guys and just making it known, yeah, I could still get to the bucket whenever I want to, and I'm either going to get to the free throw line or I'm going to get a bucket over you. It doesn't matter if I'm not hitting jumpers. Oh, and by the way, even though he did take a few, we saw him hit a couple tonight, and that one little floater. So I'm very happy with what Jimmy did. I'm happy to see this Heat team play solid defense yet again. They look so much better when they're healthy. It's just such a fully formed team. This Pacers team is just so. They really don't scare me at this point after this one game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to read too much into it, but let's stay on Jimmy here for a second. And then obviously we got to touch on the Dragic decision. We got to get into Duncan, Jay, and some of the other guys. But there was this weird phenomenon this season where when Jimmy had 5 or fewer field goals made, they won. It's one of those strange trends. I remember asking Erik about it. It seems like months. Well, it was months and months and months ago. It seems like years ago, about this trend. I mean, I know you don't want him to be inefficient from the field, but it's almost like when he's inefficient from the field, he's making more of an effort to get to the line, and he's extremely efficient from the line. Like, we don't talk enough about how well he shoots from the line at high volume. For a guy who's not a good shooter these days, like right. And that's kind of why it makes me think that the problem with his jumper starts with his legs, because the form at the free throw line is fine. Like you never even, there's been a couple games this year, but typically you're not that worried about him. He goes to the line. Okay, that's 2. And when he misses the offhand one, you're like, all right, he'll make the next 2. I mean, he hasn't gone through prolonged slumps there. Like, sometimes even Dwayne went through those slumps. Like, Jimmy hasn't. But when he's inefficient from the field, it's like he feels a need to assert himself. I thought a couple of things I thought he did. You mentioned clamping up TJ Warren. And I do find it interesting that the focus on the Pacers has turned so much to TJ Warren that, like, Victor Oladipo was incredibly passive tonight. And it's like we don't even think about it because we just don't expect Victor to be what he was. But I'm going back 2 years, and I'm starting to think.
That looks like 1 foot out the door, folks.
Well, is it 1 foot out the door, or is he not the same guy? I mean, we've talked we've talked a lot about how you look at CJ McCollum's career, and CJ's had 6 straight consistent strong seasons, and Victor's only had 1 that was better than any of those 6. And I'm just looking at Victor's numbers, and again, we're not totally done, but he's out. There's 2 minutes left as we're doing this. I mean, right now tonight he was 4 of 9 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. I mean, scored 14 points, 1 assist, 5 rebounds, 1 steal, no blocks, 4 turnovers, like minus 18. Like, he was okay, but like he doesn't assert himself on the game. And it almost felt like.
How do you feel about his burst in general?
It doesn't look to me like it did. Now I will say this about Vic. I saw Vic in Orlando for his rookie season, for Summer League. I was there in Orlando, and he was the number 2 pick. So everybody kind of wanted to see him. And I've always noticed about Vic, he runs different than other players. He's very hunched over. Like, his back is hunched over. You know what I mean? He's got a weird gait. So it's hard to tell sometimes, because I always found him to be kind of deceptively quick because he doesn't look natural as a runner like other NBA players. It just stuck out to me right away. And when I watch him, I always see it. But 2 years ago, I mean, there was a burst, right? There was an aggressiveness,
and he can dunk. I mean, like, he's a leaper. Like, there's no doubt about that. And something that was interesting today is that there were times where I think it was Hero, but it could have been Hero and Dragic were matched up on a switch or whatnot, or just straight up against Oladipo. And Oladipo kind of had him out on an island, and he didn't just cross him up and go around him. Like, Jamal Crawford is 40-something, and he would probably do that to both of those guys right now. So to see Oladipo not necessarily take full advantage of that and get downhill quickly, there is something, to monitor there, particularly for teams with max cap space to invest. But, you went through the Oladipo stat line. So let's just give a little bit of love to the TJ Warren stat line. In 28 minutes, 5 of 14 from the field, 12 points. Mind you, this dude is getting 30 in the bubble, it feels like. 2 of 6 from 3, 5 rebounds, and essentially 4 fouls. He was okay. But I feel like this was
no, he was worse than okay. No assists, no steals, no blocks, no impact. I mean, there was no impact.
Oh.
I mean, he didn't have a free throw attempt. And I know, like, again, he's not that type of player necessarily all the time, but this was not, ending Lynn's sanity. It's not the same circumstance. It wasn't the same buzz, and it wasn't as total. Like, I mean, I was sitting courtside for the Lynn game in Miami. And I have never seen a player look more frightened from the very beginning of the game to the very end. He could not breathe. He couldn't breathe. Like Chalmers
That was
and
so
Cole,
much fun.
Oh, I mean, Chalmers and Cole just decided, like, okay, that's it. If we're going to play one game the whole year, it's this one. And they were so tired of hearing about it, the whole team. They suffer. I've never seen a player of some skill level suffocated to make look like he was a high school player like they did to Lynn. They didn't do that to TJ today. They just reduced TJ Warren to what we used to think TJ Warren was. That's all.
Cash considerations, baby.
Right. I mean, that's basically it. And it does seem like Jimmy, I guess, circled it to a degree. It's probably how they got him to back off playing in the last game. We'll get you in the next one, Jimmy. And he did focus on it. But so, yeah, no doubt. And it's something we're going to talk a lot about because they're going to draw off the Pacers in the first round. It's pretty clear. And I mean, unless the Pacers fall out behind Philly, but I'm not expecting that. And we should update too. This gets the Heat's magic number to 1, right? Or is it to avoid the 6? Or did Philly play today? I don't even know.
No, I think Philly plays tomorrow. They are against, bear with me here, they are against the Phoenix Suns, who definitely, need a win. So that'll be an interesting matchup. But essentially, now we're down to a Philly loss or another Heat win, and you're secure at 4 or 5, and probably trending
Phoenix
more
Suns.
toward 4,
Yeah. So
those unbeatable Phoenix Suns. I think the Heat are gonna get there, man. I think they're gonna be safely away from the 6 very soon.
A couple other updates that we should get to. The final score, 114-92, is in. Jimmy Butler is in the winner's circle, and I can also report that there were 5 or 6 Miami Heat players surrounding Victor Oladipo at half court after the final buzzer.
Did you notice too? And I want to let Alex in because he's got to run to the Zoom calls. Did you notice too? I did tweet it. It was so obvious. Jimmy was on the floor by the free throw line, and it wasn't even Vic who knocked him down, I don't think. And Vic walked over to him to make sure he was the only pacer to make sure he extended a hand, and Jimmy took it. Jimmy wouldn't have taken it from other guys. He took it for Vic. It is just obvious. Like, dude, Victor Oladipo is in the Heat's DMs. It's
Drew Holiday also at this Heat game. I'm sure it's got nothing to do with the 2 brothers playing on the Pacers.
No,
more to do with the Heat.
Nothing at all. They're all trying to get there. All right, final thoughts, because I want to let you go, Alex, and we may bring Alf in here too. But I mean, your overall. Let me give you a couple of players' performances today, and you sort of comment on them. First thing, when did Tyler Hero end up with 17? How the hell did that happen?
I was going to say that. I'm surprised.
As we were talking, he was going crazy, hitting threes, wide open threes.
All right, so he went off the garbage. But let's get to
the end of the day. He was over there scoring at the rim and getting these little crafty finishes, and he looks as comfortable as ever. And we did see more of time with that lineup of Hero out there with Duncan, Jimmy, and Bam. We saw it with Crowder as the 5th guy, I think. And I'm still really in love with that lineup. If you're talking about just this T team, I think it proved, it's really hard. It's really hard to guard when you're talking about this roster. I just don't see the obvious defense there. Whereas without those multiple shooters, maybe they're not as effective since none can't do the same type of playmaking stuff and the same size zero. I think more points for me there. And I'm going to give myself some credit here for Derrick Jones Jr. as the roller. I was battering that all year, and I feel vindicated, man. Derrick Jones Jr. as a rolling threat when the team goes kind of small, it's just tough to guard, man. If you don't have a big on the back line and you're running the pick and roll with Dragic, they play up on him a little bit. Derrick Jones Jr. is getting that dunk, and that's one that Dragic can't mess up. That's one lob he can't mess up there.
Well, he didn't mess up any of them tonight, and that's the other thing I want to get to before you go. I want to focus on Dragic here a little bit. Because you mentioned it.
He looked great.
You mentioned it that Hero got those minutes because he replaced Dragic. So essentially he became a de facto second starter for a few minutes with that starting group of Adebayo, Butler, Crowder, and Robinson. Dragic was 5 of 16 from the field. He struggled a little with his shot, 1 of 6, only 1 free throw, and he missed it. So his shot was off, but 6 rebounds, 9 assists, and a plus 22. Scored 11 points in 30 minutes. I mean, let's get to the obvious topic here. Was this a one-game thing, in your opinion, where we got to get this win? I'm going to start Goran.
I hope so.
Or have they decided? What I will say? I said before everything started, before Hero took over, which is that Goran Dragic was going to be trusted by Erik Spoelstra in the bubble. It's a tournament-like setting. He's going to be great in this format, and Eric's going to hand him the ball and let him go. And maybe that was what they were looking to do all along, and they just couldn't because he rolled the ankle. That's why they waited. and put Hero in there, who is starting game one of the playoffs against this team?
That's really tough to say at this point. I hope not. You already know how I feel about – I really like Dragic off the bench. And I feel vindicated in that too because I thought he looked good. If you're talking about just the way that he was moving, the way that he was navigating the floor, especially in that bench lineup, him and Derrick, again, that pick and roll combination was very good for them and was helping their offense out when they couldn't hit threes there for a while. But at the end of the day, I think Dragic, as you saw, didn't shoot well. And I think that's something that's going to happen more often than when he plays off the bench. And I just think like, you're going up against Brogdon and Oladipo in the backcourt. It's just not very, that's a pretty big backcourt when you're talking about 6'4" guys who are mobile and Oladipo isn't there 100%. I just don't think it's a fair matchup for him. I would like to see him come off the bench again. And to be fair, it's not like he didn't play with that bench unit a lot. He did. So all of this may be kind of moot, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just kind of went back to Kendrick Nunn to preserve Dragic off the bench and what he provides there. And I think he's maximized better in that way, just like Kendrick Nunn would look better in the starting lineup than coming off the bench.
Greg, again, it's not who we think should start because I think we've all kind of bounced around on this, although I think all three of us have kind of.
Well, you didn't see. I didn't even mention Tyler Hero here.
Well, no, that's what I'll get to. So, Greg, who do you think he will start? Not that's what I just polled on Twitter. Not who do you think he should start, but who do you think he will start? Which of those three guards?
This is such a tough question, and I'm probably going to overthink it. So here's how it goes, and I can never give you a short answer, but I'm going to try. I think that the best option and who Spoelstra will go to is Goran Dragic, ultimately, I think, ahead of Hero and Kendrick Nunn. But there's just some lingering thought deep in the gut that I can't shake it since Alf mentioned it earlier on the pregame show, and that is maybe this was just holding Kendrick's spot, and he's going to stick with his guy who was, productive throughout the season, and maybe this is just going to be that you see Nunn get inserted and have a quick hook, and that's how we handle this going forward.
Alex, if he does that,
I'm very disappointed that Leif didn't say Tyler Hero there, but
that's funny. I do guts check and hope traffic Tyler Hero, and then I completely pivot away from it. That's very customary of me.
No, but I agree, though. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to that again for the same reasons I said before. I think he fits like a glove in the starting lineup. I think Hero, that's the card that I feel like they're going to go to more often in the playoffs when things get tough because, again, the size, the playmaking, I think, is like Nunn, whatever he gives you attacking the basket, I feel like it doesn't come that often to say that Hero isn't more effective, but Nunn is just a better fit. I think he would be more inefficient coming off the bench and having to kind of create his own shot off the bench without a Dragic out there, right? Whereas as opposed to him as a starter, he's playing off of Jimmy and Bam. I feel like he needs those playmakers next to him. So I think I have a feeling he's going to end up starting still. I think it makes a lot of sense.
But Alex, if he's the fourth guard, all right, if it turns out now that he's the fourth guard, there might not even be that many minutes for the fourth guard with the way that Spoelstra typically shrinks the rotations in the playoffs.
Yeah, you beat me to it.
We may just be talking about Dragic, Hero, and excuse me, and now I'm losing my mind. Dragic, Hero, and Robinson. And if that's the case, then you got 96 minutes there, approximate, because you can play small, you can play guys together, but you got about 96 minutes approximate. And
is he the new Myers Leonard? He's gonna just play the first and third quarters, maybe a little bit more, and then
but he tried that though. Alex, he tried that. He was playing Nunn basically, a first quarter stint, a third quarter stint, and he wasn't. He went back to him a couple of times, but the productivity wasn't there. And again, look, Kendrick's been dealing with other things. Hopefully, he was able to clear his mind. And I do think he can play a role for this team, just like I think Myers can play a role for this team. But I think what you saw tonight, one of the things we've talked about is, okay, if they shrink the rotation and if Nunn is not a starter, then you're basically deciding between DJJ and Nunn as the ninth. And I think what you saw today, and I'm not saying it'll happen all the time, but that DJJ provides something different. He's not better than Kendrick at some things. He's clearly not a better shooter. He's not a better scorer, but he gives you length. He gives you energy. He gives you vertical spacing
And
Okay.
against Indy, that's really vital because this is not a team that shoots a lot of threes. They kind of want to play an old school style of basketball. So when you have a high flying DJJ, it can kind of get the pace up.
And
And
they
I
don't have
think
a
that's
backup
what the Heat
big.
want to do. Correct. Exactly. So there's no rim protection. So I feel like this is a series where DJJ may end up being that ninth guy. And then the next round, it ends up being K-Nunn or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if Derrick's going to be as effective versus Giannis and the Lopez twins. Whereas off the bench, he's playing versus the likes of Ralph Sampson as the Pacers backup big. I think that would make a lot of sense for
Wait,
him to play
Ralph
more.
Sampson? Okay, on that note,
Is it Ralph? It's not Ralph Sampson?
It's
Oh, what am I talking about?
It's
Ralph Sampson's a
Jakar.
Rockets
the best player
guy.
in college basketball
Oh
before you were
my!
born.
How did
Ralph
I even make
To
Sampson?
sound old.
That's a good time for Alf to get in.
Oh
Alf,
my
Listen, now you're
Alex-
talking my language.
Wow.
yeah, Alex, go to the Zoom calls. I'm subbing you out. You had a 3 for 13 first half, but no, thanks, Alex, for joining us. Alf, bring you in here. Let's just get your raw. I mean, you've had a couple minutes to think about it. Your raw opinion of what happened tonight.
What I saw happen is you saw a team that I think the Heat finally locked in tonight. And we were saying before the game, this is just like an extension of the playoffs. And you saw a team completely locked in. Defensively, they reached a different level tonight. Held a team in the bubble under 100, which doesn't happen a lot. The offense has been crazy in Orlando. So they held the team under 100 tonight. Jimmy Butler did Jimmy Butler things, right? He got to the line a ton. You'd like to see him shoot a little bit better from the field, but listen, you'll take this game from Jimmy Butler. Like if he can just get to the line that much and score that many points while only hitting 5 field goals, you'll take it. You want to see a little bit more from Bam, but overall, like everyone did what they were supposed to do, and the first half was a little bit disappointing offensively. But what you want to see from the Heat, in my opinion, is you want to see them lock in defensively because at some point the threes are going to start to fall. And I saw Leif say this on the timeline that there's always a 3-point barrage coming at some point. So if they can hold the fort defensively, at some point in the game, they're going to unleash from 3 and they're going to put the game out of reach. And you saw that kind of happen tonight.
Well, and the Pacers were the best shooting team by field goal percentage in the league this year, first at almost 48%. And tonight they're all the way down. Where did they finish? At 39%. So, I mean, the Heat defense was there.
Yeah, it was there. And the other thing you mentioned, and then we're going to come back with some forward-thinking thoughts after the break. The other thing you mentioned was Duncan Robinson, and I think it's so obvious now that when this team struggles to free him at a certain point, they make a decision, and particularly after what happened in the Toronto game, they made a decision coming out of halftime. We're getting him looks. I mean, he was not just hunting shots, like he had the first one, but there was another sequence early in the third quarter where they literally shut off his angles 3 straight times, and he kept looking for a shot. Like there was obviously a tap on the shoulder at halftime that says, get your shots up. Okay. Figure out a way to get your shots up, figure out a way to get him the ball. And you looked at it at one point, I don't know where it ended up, but Duncan was a plus 25. He ended up plus 24, which was best on the team. And like, if you watch the game, you can see why. It's just like the floor is tilted when he's out there, but it's only tilted when he keeps shooting.
It's got to be so much fun to be Duncan Robinson because like there has to be a part of him that understands how vital he is to all this. And the fact that he has probably the greenest light in the history of Heat basketball. Like, so it's gotta be a lot of fun to launch 10 threes and everyone in the locker room says you should have got up 12.
Yeah, and I think they're getting there with Jay Crowder too, who we haven't talked about, and we will after the break. But he was 4 of 6 from 3, and one of the missed threes, by the way, he's shooting over 62% from 3 in the bubble. 62% from 3. One of the missed threes was he jacked it up at the end of to beat the buzzer from 60 feet. So he was basically 4 of 5 from 3 today. But before we get to the rest of the episode, I want to tell you about another great sponsor, 5 Reasons Sports Network. That's our friend Dr. Jonathan Chung at Keystone Chiropractic. Were you aware that Florida is a no-fault state? That means if you're in an accident, no matter who's at fault, your insurance company is responsible for paying for your medical care. In Florida, you got only 14 days after an accident to see a doctor to report an injury. After that time, you're responsible for your own medical bills. So make sure you get checked by a licensed health professional. If you suspect that you got hurt, even if you think your injuries are minor. Get some more health tips like this and more by following at Keystone Neuro, that's Keystone or at Dr. Jonathan Chung on Twitter and Instagram. Also check out the website, chiropractickeystone.com. All right, want to get to a couple more players with you guys, and then we're going to get to what they do going forward here. I mentioned Jay Crowder. One of the other things about Jay that I just love watching, and he had 8 rebounds and 4 assists and 2 steals tonight, and a block. So he was all over the place, plus the 14 points on 8 attempts. Is that guy runs out on more shooters than any Heat player I've ever seen. Like, he recovers and runs out. I'm not saying he always gets out to the shooter, but the effort, the motor, it just seems like the type of guy that Spo's just not going to take out very often.
Listen, and I said this on Twitter. If Jay Crowder can pick up guys like Victor Oladipo going forward, I don't think it's something that you're looking for him to do, but if he can do that, what it does to free them up defensively and it gives them a different look than just saying Jimmy Butler, go out and guard the best guy every single night and wear yourself out defensively where your offensive game suffers. That's huge, right?
Game changer.
Yeah, it's huge if a guy like Jay Crowder can pick up a guy like Victor Oladipo. And he did a really, really good job on him tonight and then made them pay on the other end. That's the other thing. It's not – and Derrick Jones Jr. had a great game tonight, and I think this is just a matchup that he can flourish in. But Jay Crowder, where you don't lose anything offensively from having him on the floor, and if he can pick up a guy like Victor Oladipo and make him work for everything and free Jimmy Butler and kind of hide a Goran Dragic, a Tyler Hero, a Kendrick Nunn, that's huge for the Heat. It really is.
Sometimes when I watch Jay play, it almost reminds me of some hybrid UD James Posey player. He brings some of both of what they brought to I'm not going to go as far as to say he's UD. Let's stop right there. But just the way he approaches the game, the fact that he's so aggressive at all times and gives you something on both ends. I mean, it's just he's a Miami Heat player.
Yeah, and it's just remarkable because I go back to when we talked about the trade that night. And we spent about Alf, you and I did it. I remember I was sick. I was coughing my way through it. And we were trying to, make sense of the Justice Winslow trade and everything that went on with it. And we spent about 4 times as much time on Andre Iguodala as we did on Jay Crowder. And I'm not diminishing what Andre's done because I thought Andre had a really good stint tonight. But what Jay Crowder has given them, I mean, he's shooting 60% from 3 in the bubble on high volume. And it's not like you look at his shot and you're like, I mean, obviously he's not going to stay up at that level. There's no way.
No,
I mean, right?
There's some regression coming.
But it's just remarkable that he's continued to do it. I want to get to a couple more players, and then we're going to check out of here by kind of looking forward here. We talked a little bit about Derrick Jones Jr. already. I want to get into Bam's game today because I feel like what Bam did at the beginning of the game, Heat fans are going to have to be okay with. There's going to be some game. He only played 22 minutes today, by the way. But there's going to be some games where he just is a little clunky, but he continues to be aggressive. And I felt like that was even though he only had 4 free throws tonight, he was 4 of 10 from the field, ended up with 10 points. He did have 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks. He was terrific defensively. And I just feel like when he's aggressive early, even if the shots are not going down, it sets a tone that one of their all-stars is here, on offense. And
you got to have it. You have to have it from Bam. If he's going to barrel towards the basket a couple times, a little out of control, or take an off-balance shot that maybe he wouldn't normally take because he's so conscientious of that kind of stuff, you need that from Bam. This is a whole thing. This is what will unlock some of that. So it's almost like a situation where there's going to be circumstances where it has to get worse before it gets better. And then all of a sudden it will click and he won't have these stretches where he starts out that way. But you needed him aggressive. And ultimately tonight, they just didn't need him. I mean, when you have Derrick Jones Jr., 9 of 11 from the field. He's essentially doing the Bam stuff from a dunking perspective. So, Bam went and did some other things. And when he's impacting the game that way and being so good defensively, there were a couple times where some guards got switched out on him. I think Brogdon was one, and he did not get to the rim. So, I mean, ultimately, Bam was Bam. But I will say this about his scoring games and the up and down play that we've seen offensively, particularly. As we get deeper and deeper into the playoffs, the magnifying glass is going to be it's just going to get turned up on this because, Adebayo is an all-star now and he's starting to earn that, and he has a big paycheck coming his way soon, and he deserves all of that. He's earned it. But with that comes heightened expectations. So it's something to watch definitely this playoff run.
I will say this, like I'm not worried about Bam offensively, right? 22 minutes. He scored 10 points. Like that's fine to me. Like his defense was incredible. But what I will say is the Heat are at their best when the stat lines look like they did tonight, right? Where you're not relying on anybody too heavily, or the offensive load isn't on one guy's shoulders. Like you had 7 guys in double figures, led by Jimmy Butler at 19 points, and he didn't even play over 30 minutes. So nobody scored over 20 points, and the Heat blew out the Pacers. The Pacers have been one of the best teams in the bubble. Like the Heat are at their best where you don't know where the offense is coming from. So to me, I agree with you, Ethan. Like it doesn't matter as much if Bam hits those shots. It's the aggressiveness. Like he shot at least 3 elbow jumpers. I don't think he made a single one. But you want to see him take those shots. You want to see him take runners in the lane. But at the same time, for the Heat to be successful, like you cannot rely on Bam Adebayo's offense. Like if you're relying on his offense, you're probably going to lose that game.
But I think you're right about something, Alf, here, and I think we have to look at this Heat team a little differently than other Heat teams. Their 2 biggest stars are not necessarily going to be their biggest scorers, and that's a different thing for fans to get used to. I mean, there were a lot of games this year where Kendrick Nunn led them in scoring. Whereas, obviously Bam and Jimmy were making more of an overall impact, but Kendrick was providing that offense. It's just a different team. Most teams are led, you watch Portland, right? And that's Dame Lillard's team. Like he is going to make his imprint on every possession offensively, Harden and Westbrook in Houston. But the Heat are not built like that. Their 2 best players are sort of inherently unselfish. They're both can be a little awkward offensively. Neither of them trusts his jumper, okay? But it's just all the other things. And so I think what happens is when they're kind of wrecking balls just because they're aggressive, Jimmy's in the post and pounding people in the post, okay, and looking for cutters and looking for shooters, and Bam is rolling the rim and doing those guys. We're going to see bursts from different players. And I think that's the way this thing is designed. And when you look at 7 guys in double figures today, you're going to see a Tyler Hero burst. You're going to see a lot of Duncan Robinson burst. You saw DJJ burst today. You're going to see some Jay Crowder burst, and obviously Dragic, that's what he does. That's what he's made his career on. That's how he launched his career against the San Antonio Spurs when he was still in Phoenix, right? Was with a burst. That's how this team is built. And I think that's one of the reasons, guys, that it's been hard for the national media to get their arms around this team. It's a challenge to kind of look at their team. Every other team is easy to figure out. If Kawhi and Paul George play well, the Clippers are going to win, right? And they're going to do that a lot with their scoring as well as their defense. With the Heat, Bam and Jimmy might have single-figure scoring games, might impact the game more than anybody else in the team. Duncan might go for 27, Hero might go for 23, Dragic 17, and they still win. And
There's a lot of intangibles, screen assists, dribble handoff. Well, dribble handoffs result in an assist, but a lot of times it's a hockey assist. Like there's a lot of things that these guys do, and then as you're watching as a Heat fan, and you're used to this team, and you see them doing it, and you're like, oh my God, like what they're having an amazing game. Like we just talked about Andre Iguodala played tremendously today, and he didn't score a single point.
Yep.
I mean,
it's funny. He was 0 of 4 from the field, and it's like I looked at his stat line. I'm like, well, there's nothing there. But when I watched him, I was like, okay, he helped tonight. And you're right. That's what they're about. All right, we got to close. So I got 2 quick things for you guys. The first thing is the Oladipo stuff keeps coming. I mean, there was after the game, everybody's tweeting it out. Victor keeps leaving his teammates after games to hang out with Heat players. I don't know if he's sending a sign to his current spouse, basically the Pacers, that he's on his way out the door. It's weird, right? Isn't it weird?
I mean, I know that we're in a different era where it's very buddy-buddy, and these guys have all played AAU ball together, and there's all of those dynamics. So, I mean, we don't want to go overboard, but it does look like Depot has been – I mean, we knew how connected he was to Wade. We know that there's ties to, Jimmy in certain ways, and he just was particularly chummy with Bam, which I didn't necessarily see that previously. And we've talked about Bam kind of being a magnet to other players, and just all that lining up with that 2021 space and the stuff about the Pacers not wanting to spend money. There's just, I mean, too much smoke for there to not be fire.
Yeah, it seems so obvious. All right, let's get to the last part of this. You got 2 games left. OKC, which is playing for seeding in the West, but they're kind of in a weird spot because I feel like they're trying to avoid Houston and lose and drop to 6. So I don't know if they're going to play to win in that particular game. Obviously their guards would give the Heat problems if they were all playing, but we don't know that they're all going to play. Then you got the last one against Indiana. We said before this game, if you win this one, you can shut it down, basically. Is that what you do? Just stagger guys, maybe rest some of them in this game and some of them in the last game?
I think you watch what happens with Philly tomorrow with Embiid out. If they lose, right, I think you do. I don't think you sit guys, right? I think you just play guys limited minutes. And we kind of saw it already tonight. Like, I mean, the Heat blew out the Pacers, but nobody played over 30 minutes, right? So I think we already saw the conservative playing time tonight before anything has been decided. But if the Sixers lose tomorrow, to fight for a 4 seed when the home court advantage doesn't matter, it would be absolutely silly. Like,
yeah,
I mean, your key guys should be playing under 20 minutes the last 2 games if the Sixers lose. Now, if the Sixers win, you got to try to win on Wednesday, right?
Right.
You just to keep them honest. So.
But the Sixers aren't going to win, are they? I mean, they're playing a Phoenix team that's playing for their lives right now. They've got
the Heat almost beat that team without Jimmy Butler and Goran Dragic.
There's 2 things, though. The Sixers play Phoenix tomorrow, but then they also play Toronto on a second night of a back-to-back at 6:30. So the Heat game versus the Thunder is at 8 p.m. and the Raptors-Sixers game is at 6:30. So there's
but the Raptors have pretty much shut people down. I mean, they didn't play a lot of guys tonight against the Bucks. It's hard to evaluate it, but I think you're safe. That's my thought. Is I think you're safe. My
vote is shut them all down. I think that you should not take any chances because the worst thing ever would be any one of these guys to tweak something all of a sudden. So
the one I'd shut down first is Goran. I just think you're rolling the dice with him. You got the game out of him you want. He showed he can be your starting point guard again if you need him to be. And to me, you tell Goran, take a 5-day rest for your body. And
can we put Duncan Robinson in a shark cage or bubble wrap or something like that, please?
He's indestructible. Alex, you're back for the calls. We've got 30 seconds. Give me your takeaway.
My takeaway is that Goran and Derrick Jones Jr. really love playing for each other. They both lit up when asked about each other and that pick and roll combination. My other takeaway is the Heat are looking very positive about the games going forward, and they seem very confident, man. I got to say.
Well, this is the game they wanted when they got into the bubble. I don't think the 3-3 matters. I think they secured what they needed to secure. The 3 seed was always a long shot to get to Boston. We knew that. They got in this matchup. They kind of knew they were going to be playing the Pacers or the Sixers, and that the Bucks would be after that if they got there. And here we are. I think the only shame of it is that the Heat were such a good home team this year. They probably would have been the 4 seed. They might have even been the 3 seed if they'd gotten to play out their real schedule because it was so soft before it got restructured. And those home games would have been fun. I mean, I think they would have been a lot of fun with this team. It's it's not the biggest shame of COVID. There are much bigger shames than that, but it's something that would have been cool to watch. All right. For Alex, me, Greg, and Alf, we'll be back this week. I did sit down for a while. Alex did too with Tim Bontemps of ESPN.com, and we're going to air that. Even though we recorded today, we're going to air that in the next 24 hours, and we'll be back after the Wednesday Oklahoma City game. Have a great day, great night, great whatever.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.